Florida's incumbent Attorney General Ashley Moody has sued the Biden administration over mask mandates, won settlements against drug companies over opioids, and pursues justice from a politically conservative perspective. She is facing re-election and an opponent in November who provides a clear contrast. Aramis Ayala became Florida's first black state attorney in 2016, elected in Central Florida. A year later, she made state and national headlines by declining to seek the death penalty in a high-profile police murder case, after which then Governor Rick Scott moved it and other such cases from her jurisdiction. Democrat for Attorney General Aramis Ayala joins us right there live, listening to my very long lead-in. So good to see you, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
So if we can, let's start out with that death penalty case, because that's something that, you know, despite not being in the jurisdiction you were working, we all heard about it. We all heard the news about what happened with then Governor Scott. Since then, have you changed? Markeith Lloyd, the defendant, the convicted, is on death row as we speak. Have you changed your perspective on that at all?
You know, I always love having this conversation about the death penalty because the death penalty is so emotionally driven. And when I ran to become state attorney, I promised to do something different, which would be accountability and looking at whether or not policies that we have are effective. And when we realize that we spend $51 million in the state of Florida every single year, that's not long term, every year to keep the death penalty going, we have to consider the fiscal responsibility of a broken policy that simply does not work.
Oh, a couple of questions on that. Whose figure is that, 51 million a year?
So I'll definitely get you that. It was one of the local South Florida, actually, papers. The Florida Bar has posted it as well, the Florida Bar.
So you are generally opposed to the death penalty for various reasons like that, and yet at the moment it is Florida law and requires a unanimous jury recommendation to impose it. Right now, South Florida is riveted on the death penalty proceedings of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas shooter. If you were Broward State Attorney, would you not have opted for that route?
You know, I mean, we can talk about all the ifs. It doesn't change the reality of the death penalty. It also doesn't change the reality of considering it. You know, the death penalty makes it very clear. I think as the attorney general, as the state attorney, you are required to follow the law. And that's what I do. That's what I've always done. And that's what I will continue to do, is follow the law. That also means that we have to consider the pursuit of justice in that. And when we are looking at broken policies that don't help people, we take money, we use tax money just to be able to say that we're doing things. So the key is understanding the tax liability of a broken policy.
Do you know what the tax liability is of a convict who spends life in prison?
Well, that's where the number comes from. It's $51 million above that which we would spend on a life in prison without the possibility of parole sentence.
Okay, so let's kind of pivot a little bit, but stay with enforcing and applying Florida law, because right now, as you know, one of your colleagues, Andrew Warren, who is a state attorney in Hillsborough County, was suspended by Governor DeSantis because he had said he would not be prosecuting cases under Florida's new, more restrictive abortion law. Do you see a parallel there at all between what happened with you and this suspension?
You know, there's a lot there, because part of being the elected state attorney locally or the statewide chief law enforcement officer of the state is to ensure that there are constitutional protections that exist, that our job as the attorney general, Andrew Warren's job as the state attorney, is to ensure that people are protected and we're not violating our foundational legal aspects. So when you think about the Florida Constitution, it has a very strict provision related to privacy. And the courts have been very clear that that privacy right is applied to abortion rights. So if you have a state attorney who is looking at a law that on its face is unconstitutional, despite being passed by the legislature, despite being signed into law by the governor, there still has to be a stopgap to ensure that the people are protected and we're not having, whatever we say goes, but we actually have a foundation from which we evaluate our laws, and that's the Florida Constitution.
So it sounds like you should be running for state legislature.
Well, when you're talking,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
It sounds
No,
like,
when
you want to change the law. Why not run for the state legislature?
Well, when you're talking about changing laws versus interpreting laws, that's what the three branches of government are for. Creating laws, saying that we are creating laws that are unconstitutional, that's why you have those positions to ensure that the legislature is doing their job. So while you're making laws, that's the job of the legislature. If you are an executive, your job is to ensure that they are faithfully executed and based upon a level of justice.
So you are running to be Florida's top prosecutor. You're also in that position running to be a sort of the chief public safety officer. So I'm interested to hear what you think is Florida's #1 threat, or maybe 1, 2, and 3 threats to public safety in this state right now.
Well, I think we have to recognize national security. It's real easy to limit our conversation on public safety to just gang violence or inner city violence. But there are real threats when it comes to national security, and we have to have an attorney general who is going to support and ensure that we aren't working politically to protect people who former presidents who live in this state or anyone else, but that we are going to execute the laws not just for our own political benefit, but for the safety of other individuals. I think that another public safety threat is domestic violence. A lot of times we're talking about the just looking inside of a person's home and not recognizing that domestic violence has a larger impact upon mass shootings and even police officers, knowing that that's one of the most dangerous places for an officer to go to. So domestic violence, gun violence, and certainly national security have to be considered when we're talking about public safety.
Do you think the word justice, means different things to different people? Has justice become politicized?
Unfortunately, I teach. I'm a professor, and in teaching students defining justice, I say the way that I try to explain is that some people focus on the outcome only, and others focus on the process. So when we're talking about justice, we have to consider the process. Is everyone going through the same process, which means we have equal justice, or are we playing with it and doing favors for some and considering backgrounds of others and the economic status of someone, whether it's a public defender or a private lawyer, things and people who go through the system considering things of that nature. So I do believe that there is some level of politicization to the word justice, but if we focus on the process and the outcome, I think that puts us more aligned where we can find that common ground, that we're not looking at how political the idea of justice is.
Aramis Ayala, you are in one of the state's marquee races. We thank you for sharing a little bit of your Sunday with us, and we will absolutely follow you to November.
Thank you so very much.